This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code SOUTHGATE to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
What is the sound of one hand clapping? What is the sound of one fist punching? What is the sound of the IronCast? Dear students, we fast approach the end of our long and treacherous journey down the IronCast's path. We have long said it is not a path to a door, and yet the horizon bears upon us quickly. Tonight, Citadel at the Edge of Vengeance. Season 2, Episode 8, Joy offers Davos tips on appealing to the masses. Danny begins to understand his limits, and Mary seeks the truth about her past. Director tonight is Julian Holmes. Roy Thomas and Gil Kane get our good old Marvel credits, because you always got to respect those Marvel guys who made it all happen. And then we get our created by Scott Buck. Written by this evening is Melissa Glenn, Matthew White, and Tatiana Suarez-Pico are our executive story editors, and our story editor, hardest working lady in show business tonight, is Jenny Lynn. Good old Jenny Lynn. Okay. Tonight we open up with our Davos Scouts, our little gangsters.
Well, actually, we open up on Danny himself and the narration with Colleen is what starts it off, saying your training is almost complete. What was that?
Well, because they're I couldn't remember who the first person talking was. But what we're gonna get to is we get this interplay between the teachings of Davos and his little gangsters, and Danny, because this is about teachers and training, and this is very much about teachers and training, and what I think is actually kind of even the deepest aspect of this is this question of what are we training for? And, it's one of these things that I think has always raised a question, because we always say, oh, Davos has two fists, Danny has one.
Right.
And I think the reason why is because Davos is so much open to the corruption of the power. And, the path of corruption leads to power. You know what I mean? I think that's what we see in this is how Davos, and throughout this episode particularly, we see how Davos is warped by the power, warped by the inherent evil of the dragon's promise. And for what it's worth, there is maybe, it's an interesting thing. One of my other favorite Netflix shows is The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. And in that, it is a very puritanical view of witches and witchcraft, where they do, in fact, pledge themselves to the Dark Lord Satan to gain the power of the Dark Lord Satan. And they're in this, and the central question of it isn't so much, should we pledge ourselves to the Dark Lord Satan to gain power? Because gaining power is good because you can do good with that power. Although there's maybe this secondary question in that film about whether or not there is even any good you can do with power of that magnitude. Really, it's a great take on the bewitched aspect of things as you watch that series, because you usually. I'm sorry.
So what you're saying is like the concentration of power in any area being too dense is what is dangerous to the whole system.
Well, what it is, it's about not being able to resist the power. It's not being able to resist the temptation. It's like, and you think about, so here's the thing. Let's say you win the lottery tomorrow. You can suddenly do a lot of awful things with all that money. Yeah. You can also do a lot of good things. But the good things will probably be less fun. Do you give in to the temptation to just do what makes you feel good, or do you say, no, I have a higher purpose with this gift granting thing?
I think the other thing with it is you think you know yourself. And you have these ideas about how you would react in certain situations, but like unless you're there, you can't know yourself because not even you have met the person that you will be when you encounter that situation. So it's an interesting thing.
Yes, well, it's along those same lines. I've often said this is a perfect supervillain story. And in the Superior Spider-Man recently. So for those who don't know, the Superior Spider-Man, it is Dr. Octopus. He's in this new cloned body, and he's all young and fit and Hollywood ready. And he's trying to be a hero. He's trying to be good. But by his nature, he is an evil man. And he has this love interest in this who basically he betrayed, and now she's very angry at him, and yada, yada, yada. But, there's a lot of classic, sex-com interaction between the two and how it's going to play out, I believe. But they raise this question, which is one of the oldest questions with Dr. Octopus, which is, was he a nice guy before the accident? Was he just a really sweet and wonderful guy, and then the accident happened and drove him insane? And Maria makes this point about, no, there's all sorts of scientific studies on this that says, no, you were always a jerk, that all that changed in your brain was that you got to be able to control your arms psionically, but that, quite frankly, you just didn't have power. And once you had power, then all of your evil tendencies came out. And I think that is what we see with Davos. Like, I don't think Danny ever thought Davos was evil. Though we know from his story that he told about, stepping on the necks of the liars.
Right.
To end them more quickly. We know that he always had this evil in him. But of course, it's not something Danny would have ever seen. Because for Danny, it was always just his buddy, his friend. And because they didn't have power, and I'm sure Davos never took him on those trips to the bottom of the cliff,
And
I'm
Danny's
sure Danny
not
had
the
no
most
idea.
perceptive or observant guy to begin with.
Yeah, Danny is very trusting, Not for nothing, that comes from that super privileged lifestyle.
Right.
He was so protected and so sheltered. And then, the monks come out of the wilderness and adopt him. As far as he knew, no one was a jerk. And it's this thing, because everyone he knew was that, the people his parents paid to raise him, and his parents probably in and of themselves were decent enough people. And so he always had this kindness about him. And then when he does get lost, he just gets adopted. No one leaves him in the cold to die. No one leaves him in pain. And no one, like Davos's mother, is constantly tiger momming him to turn to the dark side,
Right.
So I think there is this quality of Danny where, he is so trusting, and I think that's always his thing. And I think that naivete is something that I think is going to get played out in these stories, and I think it comes up in this story a bit too.
Yeah.
With him not really wanting to take back the Iron Fist, which we get at the end of this episode. But prior to that, we have, and, again, this is one of these things where, there are parts of the show I really like. A lot of other parts of the show that are just so weak sauce.
Yeah.
And one of these things is I still don't know Joy's motivation.
Oh, my God.
I I was really hoping they were going to do here's one of the things I'm wondering. So this was a 10-episode season. And I wonder if they had a 13-episode season, and then they said, no, you get 10. And so they had to cut a lot of what they originally wanted to do. Because I have to think that there was originally an idea of Joy wanting to unlock the secrets of the Iron Fist for organic energy production. Because I have to feel that whole photovoltaics and biovoltaics subplot that never gets addressed, never gets dealt with. It's such a specific thing. I really got to feel that was something.
You know what? That makes me feel a lot better about it.
Yeah. Well, it's the only thing that really makes sense, because here's some guy who says, I know how to get the Iron Fist from him. And, of course, if she could really study the Iron Fist, then obviously you would have this ability to find this really unlimited energy source.
Right.
Bioorganic energy is this super wave of the future. I mean, the idea of, you figure about how many, like if you had the Human Torch, like if the Human Torch wasn't an adventurer, but just was some guy who sat in a power plant every day and and flamed on to burn the generators, just like the old electricity Schoolhouse Rock. Wouldn't it be great if we had a big superhero who could just turn the wheel and generate the electricity? And this is, I think, something that gets occasionally addressed in comic books, although never really monetized for reasons. But in fact, the entire Project Pegasus idea was always this idea of how can we harness superhuman energy. And yet, sadly, they never did.
Well, it kind of reminds me of, I just heard about this. It's called the ITER project, ITER. Mm-hmm. They're building a giant, massive fusion reactor in France.
Okay.
And it's being funded to the tune of like $15 billion by 5 countries. I think it's like Korea, India, Russia, USA, and Japan. Mm-hmm. And it sounds absolutely insane. To the tune of like you put 50 watts of energy in it to get it going, but once it gets going, it can produce 500 watts.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, fusion reactions are. I mean, that's a different thing. That's just good old classic fusion. And fusion reactions, those are really self-sustaining so long as you can keep on feeding it stuff to be fused, and does not produce a radioactive waste, or at least beyond just the immense amounts of radiation that a tiny sun produces.
Right. But I mean, essentially, like it feeds itself, so it's like, anyways, but I just thought that was really, really cool that they're building that. And
no, energy technology is fantastic. There is a lot of stuff. I really do think humanity is gonna think its way out of most of our problems if we don't blow ourselves up first. That's always our thing. It's like we take this apex predator thing a little too seriously, and are always trying so hard to just, if nothing else will kill us, we'll figure out a way. Anyway.
Yeah. But I think we also have to fight sort of like the predatory nature of greed, and how that can get in the way of free energy being free.
Absolutely. And getting back to, the predatory nature of greed, as I said, I do think so much of Davos's story is about that greed for power. It's very clear, everybody wanted to be the Iron Fist, but only one person wanted the Iron Fist only for the Iron Fist. And I think that's maybe even something that's maybe even more telling about any of this, is that, Danny wanted the Iron Fist because he thought it would give him opportunity. He had a greed for the Iron Fist that was about bettering, arguably, his own station, but more to the point about doing something more than just having the Iron Fist for his purpose. Whereas Davos just wanted the Iron Fist to make his mom happy.
Right. No, I think in the last conversation where they're, talking, Danny and Colleen are talking, and he says, when I lost everything, when I lost my family, I was despondent. I didn't know what to do. So the one thing that helped me keep going was having a goal or having something to work towards. And I put all my energy into getting the fist. I don't think it even mattered what he could do with it. To him, it was just something to do to stop thinking about what he lost. And it was the fist for its own purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's maybe its own argument, and maybe who knows? Maybe that actually makes it less problematic for him too, because if it is the fist for its own purpose, maybe he's not so blinded by it.
Right.
I mean, obviously he's been having problems with it, but nothing compared to what Davos is going through.
Right.
Because,
and to a certain extent, he must be sitting there thinking, "Do I even know who I am?" Because I was a child when I found that the fist existed, and I devoted all my attention to that. And in getting to know that, I don't know if I've ever gotten to know myself, which is why I'm such a simple child. So maybe I should take a little, moment and see who I really am.
Yeah, and it is maybe, I mean, there's a lot of qualities to it, but what I like about the story as it's unfolding is that there is this idea that, maybe he wasn't worthy, though that doesn't necessarily mean that, he was. It doesn't mean he wasn't the best choice. It's like, it's like, and that maybe, as we see as, coming up, maybe that someone like Colleen might be the better choice for the Iron Fist. But
yeah, see, I have such a huge problem with this because something that they, want us to believe is such a sacred thing, that it's such a revered thing, that it's such a hard thing to do, that you really have to earn it. You really have to be worthy, and then you have to give more in order to get the Iron Fist. And now you can't just make me see something in that way and then turn it on its head at the drop of a dime and tell me, hey, I can just decide to, I'm going to put it on this shelf for now. You can't just frivolously say, oh, you should have it.
Well, I guess if there's an argument to be made, maybe the argument is that the person who has it is in the best position to say who else should have it,
I mean, I thought about that too, and it's the only way I guess I can be a little bit comfortable with it, but still it bothers me.
Oh, yeah, well, I think it should, because not for nothing, as I said from the start, none of these people, except for Danny, actually earned the Iron Fist. None of these people shoved their hands into the molten heart of Shao Lao. Now they're just, they are passing it along, but at least in this moment, we're passing it along we're not stealing it. We're giving it. And I think that is maybe the argument to be made, is that there's a difference between when you take something from someone and when you relinquish something to someone.
I would have felt way more comfortable if they billed it as, hey, you want to hold on to this for a second for me? And she would have said, yeah, I'll hold on to it. And it would have been way more interesting to go on that journey with Colleen to say, oh, I'm not going to use it. I'm just holding it. And then something bad happens. She's like, oh, should I use it? Should I use it? And that's the path to discovering that she does want it. That would have been way cooler. But again, maybe that's more in line with the 13th episode.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where we get into a lot of this, is that there is this quality of they are rushing to get to the end. And it's, part of me wonders if maybe they didn't know they only had 10 at the start. It's always a thing. It's because, like, a lot of times I feel like, I think the Mary story gets short shrift. Although I do think we get a good Mary story. And I think Joy's story is neat here. Although, again, like I say, it's great, but it also is she never gets a proper motivation. Even now, as she's doing something really noble and very risky, her reason for doing something isn't particularly clear, and her, why she's taking this chance. Although I think, and here's what I'll say with Joy. I think that there is a shift that happens for Joy in this. I think Joy comes to Davos at the start with the intention of, look, I know Davos, he's not a bad guy. Much in the same way that Danny thinks, I know Davos, he's not a bad guy. You know, he's maybe a little misdirected right now, but if I can talk to him, I can explain to him how you be the better hero. I can tell him how to better do things. And she tries that, you know, by telling him to, you know, by helping him be, you know, by basically directing him to move into, you know, trying to build this community relationship. And I don't think that's done in any of a manipulative way, although I think the way it all plays out, she realizes, oh, this guy is not who I thought he was.
Well, I mean, so here's what I thought about that scene. And to preface this all by saying, you know, I would love to see these arguments be the reason that these shortcuts were taken, or that they even were shortcuts and not choices made just because the people trying to tell this story aren't very good at their jobs. So there's an equal sort of argument to be found on that side as well. But in that scene with Joy, it almost seemed like I thought she was there to try to help. First of all, and then she comes up with that argument because she's all of a sudden caught off guard and she has to think on her feet. And so just like her mom told her in the flashback, you know, no, wait, sorry, I'm thinking of something else. Sorry. Yeah. But, you know, you've got to pull from something that is real in order to be able to fake it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well,
so
like I said,
goes to the well to say, oh, this is what I really feel. Let me just say this. And so it was kind of cool, but you know, it was real, but it was manipulative as well because she's trying to fool him or you know, get back in his good graces.
Yeah, and again, it's that question: did she go there just to steal the bowl, or did she go there really to help him? I do think that she went there to help him. I think that, you know, that when she realizes it's all gone south, that's when she makes that choice to steal the bowl. And I think, you know, not for nothing, the whole scene with Yep is, you know, the restaurateur. It so shows a supervillain sociopathology. That this is so much a guy who is gone. And, you know, there's this, you know, contrary to popular belief, you know, dragons aren't nice people. At least not in the Marvel universe, you know. And I don't think Xiao Lao is different in that. And not for nothing, there are several other dragons. Fin Fang Foom, of course, is the most famous. But all of the other ones, even when they work positively with other humans, they're never friends to the human. You know, they're always just basically these nigh omnipotent beings that are allied with a human for their own interests.
Right.
And it's never that they're really dedicating themselves or even sacrificing themselves for a greater good. They are just dragons, and they are evil. They're evil monsters, even though sometimes they do good. So I don't think Xiao Lao is even meant to be a good guy. And I think what we see with Davos, like I said, I think that is the dragon coming out, and I think that is Xiao Lao, the Undyings, sort of finding a vessel that he can just let himself go in. Essentially that it is less Davos we see with the Iron Fist than it is Xiao Lao's true nature coming out. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah, that's my theory. Anyway, so good old Davos decides to kill a man in cold blood for no good reason.
Right, and what's interesting about that to me is, like, his whole idea is that I am the one with the moral superiority. But what morality are you sticking to? If you're there to protect the people, then protect the people. You can't also be there judging and killing. It's like, where do you draw the line? It seems like he changes his mind every second. There's no real ideal that he's willing to stick to. If his ideal is that the people and the citizens are the ones to protect, then you can't just be a militarized sort of judge, jury, and executioner with it also. Yeah. So it's like, I don't think he really does believe he stands for anything. And half the time, I think he's almost scared not to live up to the moment. So he does the most drastic and extreme thing he can to make it feel like he's still in control.
You know what? I mean, not to get all Freudian, but it's that dang Oedipal complex this poor kid has. We saw how his mom was so crushing of his ego. And here he is. And it's like every minute, it's like, if he's not getting praise, he assumes someone is here to destroy him. And
why he is so easily manipulated by the praise also.
Exactly. Because he's just trying to... Because even more than Danny, even. And basically, they found a character to be more naive than Danny. Man, that was an effort. But they found someone to make Danny look mature and convoluted as a character. So
that's hilarious.
Good on them for that. But when push comes to shove, Joy does. You know, after Yip is killed and they come back and they've locked up BB in the little room and freaking was it Crank? Yeah, I believe it was Crank kills Rhino when Rhino says, "I don't think this is a good idea." Mm-hmm. And then they they go to steal the bowl, which again, speaking of things that like just happened way too quickly, it's like, oh, where's the bowl? Let's randomly check behind this table.
Right.
You know?
Right. And
I get the feeling that there was probably a scene they originally thought where they were going. I mean, again, we hope. You know, it's like right. You know, the legendary Snyder cut of Justice League. You know that. No, someone once wrote a good film, and there was another cut out there that exists, we promise, where all these things make sense. So we're going to say that there exists somewhere an early draft of the script where finding the bowl was not, like, maybe even Joy sees him hide the bowl in another scene, you know, because he says, this bowl is my power and I have to hide it, yada, 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 you know. So that I think a lot of the stuff where that you get after the fact when he says, that's the one thing that can take my power, is something that he probably said to Joy earlier. That kind of idea, I suppose. But that's not what we get. Instead, they steal the bowl and then... She tells BB to go to the dojo, and then when we next see him, he's at the community center where all of the gangsters have holed up.
Right.
And we don't get to the battle at the community center until next week, I don't think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but what we do get in this one is Davos basically throwing Joy off the second floor of the building they're in.
Really?
Yeah, that was this episode. Because it's after he's confronting her about BB getting out and stealing the bowl. And he says to her, you know, and basically they go back and forth. There's a whole thing with, you know, One Eye, and then at the end of it, you know, she, you know, after she tells him, oh, I sent him to the feds and all that, yada, yada, yada.
Right.
And then, which actually comes after the whole thing about him saying, which actually comes before that. And then when he realizes that she's lying, you know, basically just goes full on supervillain and pushes her off the, pushes her off the ledge. And then we're meant to think that kills her. And does it? We don't know till next episode. Yeah, and and then of course it all comes full circle into the squared circle at the end. Right. Colleen takes Danny to the fight zone where she had fought so many times, but now it's closed down. And they have their little fight. And of course, that at the end is where Danny kind of comes to the understanding that he doesn't want the Iron Fist.
Yeah. When she says, "What are you fighting for?" You know?
Exactly. And he had been fighting for the fist, but because he wanted it. And he realized, and this I think is the most important aspect, if you want it that bad, it's the old saying, if you want something in the worst way, you will get it in the worst way. All politics aside, if you want to be the president in the worst way, there's a good chance you're going to be the president in the worst way.
Yeah.
And I think that is where he's at. He has to find the humility of the office. He has to discover that with great power comes great responsibility, as we say in the comic books. And that leads to him suggesting that, Colleen take it, and she's very rejective. And I don't think much more happens in this episode.
No, I think they end it right there when he says, "I think you should have it."
Yeah, I think that's about right. And so I think we'll call this a night for you fair listeners. If we've gotten our timelines completely messed up, write to us and let us know that. And Mozz, how can people write to you and tell us that we screwed up the timeline?
Well, being that we have entered the age of the multiverse, I don't think there's a timeline to screw with. We can simply get away with saying it was just one of the multiverses. But if anybody wants to reach me, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email where the Where Mozz and Paz once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitter as I live tweet things when I'm not doing podcasts like Orville, which I was going to do tonight, but we're doing this podcast, and this is much better to do, if you ask me. I will watch Orville on my own, but I do like to live tweet it when I can, although I fell asleep and I didn't get to live tweet it on Sunday, so I'm already 2 episodes behind. Anyway, when I'm doing that live tweeting, you can follow that at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle. Bing! Oh, anyway, and I forgot to ask you, did you have final thoughts on tonight's episode?
No, I rather enjoyed sort of a lot of the interesting dynamics that are played, and so even the acting was pretty decent here this episode.
Yeah, it has its definite moments, and as we run to the end, but you, dear listeners, do not have to run to the end. You may walk leisurely through on your path to the IronCast. Good night.